My name is Lenny, and I have poor mental health. You may know my story, and yet you may not. I will tell you my story in time, but today there's another story I want to tell you. This story that the way I tell it makes it seem like it's currently happening, but it actually happened 30 years ago. 30 years before I stumbled down that corridor, hitting my head and ranting and raving about Joker and demons. But this story is about a friend of mine, and who is at a crucial tipping point in his life. A teenager walks into the park. This is Greg. He's a friend of a friend. He's a friend of mine. Directly ahead of him is a bench. Sat on that bench is Tommy. He is a friend of mine that I will meet in a mental hospital 30 years from when this story takes place. When I met him, he was beaten down, and he was just beaten down from everything that happens to him in his life. But in this story, he's still young, but he is about to go down a dangerous path that will lead him to meet me and get entangled in my story. Greg walks over to Tommy and sits down next to him. Greg can clearly see the intentions in Tommy's eyes. Greg tries to talk to Tommy like a friend, showing concern for him, but Tommy just lashes out. Greg tells Tommy of an old phrase he heard growing up, Memento Mori. That's a Latin phrase. In English, it means, remember that you will die. But this phrase has no effect on Tommy. Greg insinuates that he knows what Tommy is planning to do. This just makes Tommy angry, and he just storms off. Greg is visibly shaken by Tommy's actions. But behind him, a spectral figure emerges from the tree line. Now, as this is a ghost, I am assuming it's a ghost, because Tommy was not really clear on what was happening. He was just dosed on pain meds. But he told me they had no idea he was there, so I don't know how they would know. Anyway, this spectral figure is the ghost of John, Greg and Tommy's friend that died of an intentional overdose. In other words, he committed suicide. John sits down next to Greg, even though Greg is not aware of John's presence. John knows what Tommy is about to do, and tells Greg that he needs to stop Tommy from doing something stupid like he did. John knows that his words are falling upon deaf ears, but he doesn't care. He is hoping that Greg will do what he knows is right. Both Greg and John start to remember the moment where Tommy and Greg found John dead of an overdose. John gets off the bench and fades away. Greg decides to jump off the bench and run after Tommy. Tommy, however, has found himself by the edge of the lake with John standing alongside him, watching over him. Tommy looks like he wants to step into the lake and just let the waves wash over him. Greg runs down the path and catches up to Tommy. John just stands there, watching their drama play out. Greg starts begging for Tommy to not take that step into the lake. Tommy turns around and punches Greg in the face, sending him to the floor. Tommy turns back around and prepares to step into the lake. Greg hurriedly gets up and pulls Tommy to the ground, saving his life. As both Greg and Tommy both get to their feet, Tommy thanks Greg for helping him and promises to get help for himself. John just stands there watching them. Tommy and Greg leave the park as John fades away whilst watching them, content that he has served his job and protected them. There, I just told Tommy's origin story from 30 years ago. It is a difficult tale, I will admit. The tense I just told it in may not make sense, but when Tommy told it to me, he was very high on pain meds. And plus he was no English expert, so he was mixing his tenses. But anyway, that's his story. My story is just beginning.